Alright guys, this is Punky Jay.
Hello, Punky Jay.
This is why I believe console gaming is better than PlayStation or PC gaming. There are many reasons, but
There are many reasons, but this doesn't seem like a time when you should put a big old but at the end of the sentence. What do you mean, but? There are many reasons, but what?
really the number one reason, guys, is price. An Xbox One only costs $300.
Still overpriced. Let's be frank. Even if you have a good PC, if I could go out and buy an Xbox One right now for $100, I would only do it just to resell it at its normal value. And besides, the performance bonuses of these two machines is vastly different, and so the price would naturally reflect that, don't you think? And we're living in a day and age where a GTX 960 overclocked comes in new from the factory at $200. It makes it harder and harder for me to justify spending $300 on an Xbox.
A good motherboard costs about three times as that.
That's correct. Punky Jay just said that a good motherboard costs $900. While good is a subjective term, most of us would easily believe that an extremely decent motherboard can be purchased for significantly less. My Asus Hero motherboard, the Maximus 6, it's $150, and I would consider that high-end,
PC gaming is way too overpriced.
implying just a little overpriced is alright.
And I don't care if the games are somewhat cheaper, that doesn't matter, man. If you have to pay a shit ton of money for a system, it's not worth it.
The value of this deal depends entirely on how long you have the system, how many games you buy for that system, and what the price of the system was. Let's say you spent $600 to get yourself a pretty darn decent PC. Let's also say you bought an Xbox One now at $300. And let's also say that you were buying PC games at 75% the price of console games, and that's being very generous to the console. You're saving $15 per game. So after buying only 10 games, you've saved $150. And that is, of course, half of the price in difference between the two. So if we're being very, very generous to the console, after the 20th game you buy, you are literally saving money, while simultaneously running them easily twice as good.
Just because you might save a few dollars on games, that doesn't mean anything at all to me.
Few dollars. Fun fact, if you go to G2A right now, you can pre-order Doom on Steam for $38 with insurance. GameStop sells it for $60. That's a $22 difference, and you get insurance.
I buy games used anyways. I never buy new $60 games. I just don't do that shit. That's just me though.
The reason I brought up GameStop specifically in that last example is because it seems to me that Punky Jay would rather go to GameStop to buy a game used than spend $5 more and support the developer instead. While he has every right to do this, and I understand why he would do this, bragging that you buy used games is...
Another reason I prefer console gaming is because with my Xbox, man, I can plug it into anything. I can plug it into a computer. I can plug it into a TV monitor. It's portable.
You can do all those things with your PC as well. This is not an advantage for the Xbox. In fact, it's probably a disadvantage for the Xbox because if you plugged your computer into a computer monitor, only the computer would be actually strong enough to take advantage of the computer's higher refresh rates, higher resolution, less input lag.
And it acts just like a computer. I have apps. I can get on the internet.
You can do your taxes on your Xbox. You can have multiple apps running simultaneously without a performance hit. You can edit videos just like this one. You can go to G2A and buy a game at a $22 discount. You can customize your game's files. You could watch a YouTube video on your right monitor while you're browsing an article on your left monitor, while editing aforementioned video on your middle monitor.
The Xbox One and Xbox 360 are basically both just computers. I mean, every system is a computer, but these things can run apps.
An Apple Watch can run apps. What's your point? Yes, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One are basically computers, though they lack pretty much every single advantage and freedom that the computer affords you. That's why I can save $22 on Doom, and you can't.
I mean, just like a home desktop, the only thing it's missing is the screen, but you actually can buy a screen for an Xbox, believe it or not. But yeah, I don't like doing that. I like playing with a bigger screen, and
I agree. 720p looks so much more clear when you stretch it out to 30 inches plus. If anything, the consoles would benefit the most from using a small screen. Anecdotal example. I used to have a boyfriend who would only play on a PlayStation 4. He never touched a PC. When he went away to college, he knew he couldn't take his television with him. I talked with him about getting a computer monitor instead and just plugging it up to that, which he eventually did do, and he told me that he absolutely preferred it, and it was a better experience. This doesn't prove my point, but I think it says a lot when someone who only plays on console plugs it into a computer monitor and they prefer that over a television. I think that has some level of weight to it.
yeah, that's another thing. As far as laptop gaming, consoles are better than laptop gaming simply because you can use a bigger screen.
I don't know why you would want a bigger screen if a lot of your games are sub 1080p. To each his own. However, you can take a laptop and plug it into a television if you so desire. I bought some for my sisters so that they could plug in their laptops to the television to watch Netflix. Or for my mom to watch Castle. She's super into Castle.
With laptop gaming, you're only going to go up to like 18 inches, and that's still not very big.
First off, thickness is way more important than length. But if you're playing on a gaming laptop, then the screen is right in front of your face. How big do you want it if it's right in front of your face and you have to carry it around and it's attached to your keyboard? There's a reason they don't make laptops with 24-inch screens. It would be impractical to have it be a laptop. Plus, the smaller the screen, the less of a resolution you have to use, which cuts down on the necessity for the laptop to be more powerful than it needs to be.
I mean, I would never want to game on anything smaller than a 24-inch, and that's not even that huge. It's just pretty tall.
Alright, first off, personality is far more important than height, but a 24-inch screen is going to be wider than it is tall. It's not going to be taller than it is wide.
I mean, I've seen people use 32-inch monitors, for PC gaming, and I think that's good, and I think that's a good size, honestly.
32 inches? Oh my god, I can't imagine. Hell, I have to move my head around to see everything on my 24-inch monitor. I don't think I'll ever go bigger than that. As close as you sit to a monitor when you're playing on a PC, 32 inches is so much real estate to keep track of. And imagine the resolution you'd have to run just to make sure things are clear on that much space.
Yeah, going back to the gaming thing, though, you can do that with the console. You don't have to get some fancy fuck laptop.
Correct, but it's an option. It's an option for PC gaming.
But as far as like desktops go, that shit is so overpriced. You have to fucking
What, buy all those $900 motherboards?
buy a big ass computer monitor and all that shit, and fuck that.
Well, you could buy a small one if you wanted to. It's an option.
So another thing is just comfort. People will debate this with me, but
Well, let's see if you've learned anything from those debates.
a controller is just more comfortable than having to use a clanky keyboard and mouse.
By clanky, I will assume that you mean cumbersome, which doesn't make sense because you don't actually hold the keyboard. Either that, or you're just using the word clanky to make the keyboard sound much more heavier and bulkier than it actually is. Most people simply apply pressure to the top of the keyboard without picking it up.
It just takes more effort, to have to use a keyboard, and it's big and ugly and clunky.
Well, is it clanky or clunky? You need to make up your mind. And also, don't call my keyboard ugly. My keyboard is beautiful. Not quite as beautiful as you, good sir, but it is at least an 8 out of 10. And even if it was ugly and I did hate its guts, I would have the option to buy a countless number of keyboards of different styles, designs, colors, and shapes. As for more effort, I'm not entirely sure I understand. Why would it take me more effort to rest my hands on top of something when they're not in use, instead of having to constantly have my hands held up in front of me while holding an object? Even while you're actually playing the game, your hand's weight is on the keyboard. It's being supported by the desk, by the keyboard, by the mouse pad. You are not actively manipulating an object that you are also simultaneously supporting. Now, there is some legitimacy to be said about the idea that prolonged use of the keyboard can cause cramping or a slight discomfort if it's done for too long. However, this is subjective, and while it does happen to me, it happens very rarely. Rare to the point of I don't even consider it to be a problem.
I don't see any use for them. Maybe 30 years ago.
You don't see any use for the keyboard and the mouse. But you did see how they were useful 30 years ago. All right. I'm not even going to try and change your mind on that. Perhaps as you elaborate on the idea, we can illuminate things on a more specific basis.
But technology has advanced now to where you can just use hand remotes. That's what a controller is. It's just a remote.
Actually, touchpads have been around since the 1980s, oh, wait, that's about 30 years ago. That's weird. And yet, despite the fact that we've had touchpads for so long, for some crazy reason, for some strange reason, we still attach keyboards and mice to all of our desktops. Our desktops come with them, our laptops come with them, even tablets almost always have keyboards with them. Even phones, when you want to type, present you with a simulated keyboard. The reason that we do this, despite all of the time and all of the invention and improvement that we've made in terms of touchpads and other ways of input, the keyboard is still the best method. The functionality of a keyboard is unrivaled by a touchpad. The keyboard and mouse is simply too versatile, too useful. They are easy to learn how to use. They are very cheap to manufacture and distribute. They can be programmed to do a unfathomable amount of things. They can be customizable. They do not at all require much space. They are silent, user and keyboard dependent. The sheer amount of uses and the sheer practicality of a keyboard and a mouse is unparalleled by touchpads or motion sensors.
You know, I've heard people say that it's just a toy. It's not a toy, you dumbass. It's a fucking remote.
You're right. It is a remote. A remote for your toy.
Okay, it's a remote that fits into both of your hands. That's what it is. They're comfortable. You know, like I said, there's not a lot of movement involved. I think they're great. I prefer controllers over keyboards and mice. I don't like mice. I don't like the way they feel on my hand, having to move them around.
You know, for a second there, I was just imagining if he was talking about like actual mice, like little furry mice. He's like, I don't like the way they fit in my hand. I don't like having to move them around. I was thinking that'd be funny. Like he's doing a review of pets or something. This has nothing to do with the video. I'm just the mice.
I can just use thumbsticks. People will debate that, you know, mice have more precision. That's not true, okay? It's
Riddle me this, Punky Jay. Riddle me this. If controllers and thumbsticks have as much as or more precision than the mouse and the keyboard has, then how come no MLG player, how come no professional gamer, in a scenario where thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars are on the line, how come 0.0% of all of those professional players use the keyboard and mouse? When they have the option to plug in a controller to their PC, how come 0 of them take this avenue of strategy? Time for part 2.